Blast off. What's up, everybody? Hope you're great. Happy Saturday. Happy Saturday. Wanted to start off by saying we're at the tail end now of the coaching special. We've done a lot of these, and we've booked a lot of new folks, and it's been wonderful. A lot of folks have dropped off, but we're kind of approaching the point again where I've got to push it to folks and say, hey, look, if you want to get on board 50% off coaching, you've got to do it now. Because there's going to be a point at which if I'm overbooked, I cannot take any more clients. You know, sometimes they're coming in five a day or five throughout, the 2-3 days. And there's just going to be a point at which I can't handle it anymore. Look, if you need to fix libido and erection issues on TRT, just bring me on board. This is what I have been doing for years. We'll get it squared away rather quickly for most cases too. LiveCortex.com. Use the coupon code Coach Discount. It will take thousands of bucks off the total. Every single package is thousands of bucks off right now. It's 50%. It's an unprecedented discount. Do it livecortex.com. All right. So let's get to questions here in a sec, but want to quick talk about or open it up by discussing pulse mega dosing testosterone. Now listen, cut and dry, there are benefits, mainly anabolism benefits, but there's also some confidence and masculinity and energy benefits from lots of testosterone from dosing a good bit of test. But you can only get away with that if, number one, you can tolerate AIs. and you just mega dose test all the time, or you just high dose TRT all the time, and you take your 0.25 milligrams of Arimidex, your estrogen's at 30, everything's beautiful. That's fucking amazing, but it's not the case for everybody. In fact, most people, a disproportionate majority, can't tolerate DHT derivatives or AIs, in which case you got to have the estrogen in range with a dose that's low enough to keep it there. And at that state, if you're around 25 or so picograms per milliliter estradiol, that's like the beautiful zone, right? It's a 25, 27 is like the perfect zone usually for sexual function. But then like once a week, so you have a protocol that does that. But once a week, you inject like between 20 and 50 milligrams of a long ester, and then it'll essentially last the whole week. Well, then you get a boost in anabolism, get a boost in energy, you get some productivity out of it. And if you're in the right place, and estrogen's really not going to fuck sexual function up all that much. It'll still be passable for sex generally, but it'll just be a little less good. It's a little bit of a sacrifice there. Does that make sense for you to have some increased anabolism or whatever? Now, again, as we talked about in a recent video, you could do that same strategy of having estradiol at around 20, 22 or so. And then, you dose a fast ester and you get some increased anabolism energy, but mostly you just get a super libido boost by peaking DHT when estrogen's already in range before estrogen can catch up. Just some strategy for folks, man. I mean, this is the stuff that I live for and I see it all the time. And, I get to experiment with stuff. Not everybody that comes to me has sexual dysfunction, although most people that come to me have sexual dysfunction. But sometimes folks just want to experiment, and we get to do a lot of fun shit. And that's one of them that, I discovered works really interesting. Cream. I am now fully on board with the idea that if you're going to use cream, you should start with the lower concentration stuff, because you can just dial it in shorter strokes easier. Okay. If you've got the 100 milligram per milliliter stuff and, you rub 5 pumps of it on the scrotum every day, it's the equivalent to 2.5 pumps of the 200 milligram per milliliter stuff. And 2.5 pumps is hard to actually achieve on the 200 milligram per milliliter cream. It's like you got to do 2 pumps and then you do another pump and you only rub half the cream on. It's also 20% concentration, so it sort of absorbs differently. I just think I found a lot of success with the lower concentration cream, because the shorter the adjustments you can make, the finer the adjustments you can make, the better. You don't want to be making major swings in your TRT protocol. If you have to change something, the only time that it makes sense to do a major swing is if you're reducing the dose to reduce estradiol. Then you reduce it from 175 to 120, and you let that sit for 6 weeks and see where estrogen goes. And then you maybe make another somewhat big adjustment if you have to 105 a week. And that's the only time that makes sense. Once you're down there close to being dialed in, again, you can feel sexual functions like pretty good, but there's something a little bit missing. You only make fine-tuned adjustments. Small little adjustments, boys. And you can do that with the lower concentration cream. You really can't do that with the higher concentration cream. If the principle to be applied, which makes a ton of sense, is that like once you're close to dialed in, shorter strokes is what will get you there, so you don't deviate from your norm now, from your mean, from this average, from this place where things are largely good and you want to keep it that way. Well, then it fucking makes sense to have lower concentration cream. Or in the case of sipping it in, they just change the dose a very little bit. Folks do these big swings and get themselves into big trouble and end up in this purgatory of never dialing in ever, because the adjustments they're making are too big. So you're throwing yourself out of equilibrium every time you do that. I've been doing this for years. Believe me, you don't want to change protocols when you're close to something fucking substantially, wildly different. All right, keep that in mind, boys. Keep that in mind. Somebody asked me via email, hey, Ryan, I love the DHT gel, 20% DHT gel. It's changed my fucking life. Can I dose this for life? I just want to quick answer that question. The answer is yes. I believe it's safe to dose DHT as long as it's in reasonable doses forever. It's an antidepressant. It will keep you masculine. It will deepen your voice. It's going to keep sexual function great as long as it's the right dose for you. It balances out estradiol. It's what we need. It's what we run on as men. Test for the muscles, DHT for the brain, the sort of masculine assertive frame that we have to conquer shit all the time, the sexual function, all that stuff. But like it just hair loss, there's hair loss. Like with DHT, you continue dosing a lot of it, kind of above what you might need to dose, you're going to deal with hair loss, even a little bit of it. So that's why it's sometimes surgical just to bring in for periods at a time, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, or just very, very low concentrations on top of TRT sustainably. But I do believe you can do that. I mean, we sit with DHT, some of us, depending on the protocol, at pretty high levels all the time anyway, right? You're not going to get off TRT if you're on it. So yes, I do think that you can take DHT for the foreseeable future. I do not think that's going to be harmful to the human body. I think in like 50 years, we're going to wreck it. Like all the literature is going to flip flop. And what'll be present on the literature is what people like me and people like Dave Lee and other folks have already found to be true, which is that DHT is like life for us boys. Okay. Something to think about. All right, let's get to questions. If you guys got questions, post them. Let's get them answered. Mitch, Ryan, have you ever used Kisspeptin? And how do you know it would compare to HGD? I have. I ran a pretty detailed experiment with it where I took a lot of notes and did some content on it. So you might want to go back and search through our channel, the word Kisspeptin, because you're going to find some interesting content. This is what I found. We'll talk about pros and then we'll talk about caveats. Number one, the only available Kisspeptin we have is Kisspeptin 10. So we can't really compare it to what we see in Kisspeptin studies, because what's being used in the Kisspeptin studies is Kisspeptin 54. So it is different. Number two, though, you can use it. It seems clear to me that you've got to dose pretty high concentrations of it in order to keep testicles super functional, or you've got to pulse dose throughout the day, which becomes extremely inconvenient. So you're going to be dosing 3 times a day of Kisspeptin. That's what seems clear to me based on experiments and doing all the research on it. That said, it's studied literally for resolving hypoactive sexual disorder, right? Kisspeptin interacts with the brain side of libido and sexual function in a way which is very, very powerful. Very, very powerful. All right, so those are some of the pros. It's, again, we just don't have the right dosing and the right type of Kisspeptin, the right delivery method. I mean, if we had something we could just like stick in our side and just constantly deliver Kisspeptin, that might work out. If it was Kisspeptin 54, which we can't really have access to unless you have a lot of money to pay for because you can't actually get it, but it's ridiculously expensive. Caveats, though, more caveats. Kisspeptin via interaction with gonadotropin hormone, gonadotropin releasing hormone, and the pituitary in general, which includes a set of fucking cells called lactotropes, which produce prolactin, can increase prolactin secretion. Yes, Kisspeptin can increase prolactin secretion, just like fucking gonadorelin can increase prolactin secretion. I just don't think things like gonadorelin and Kisspeptin are quite ready yet. It needs to be refined. They need to be different molecularly, potentially even completely different mechanisms, like, upregulating gonadotropin hormone releasing hormone, not just GnRH, but the upstream sort of building block, gonadotropin hormone releasing hormone. Working on that with a compound would probably be the best thing we could do. Because then it's not like HCG, where it's, particularly estrogenic. HCG is the best solution. It's not like Clomid where it blocks estrogen receptors, which causes fucking problems, right? It's hitting it right at the root. That's what I think would be the best bet. Kisspeptin is just a little too early right now for us to use that and have a predictable outcome, or at least a convenient way to dose it all. Richard, hello, Richard Libretti. What's good, Ryan? DHA is 106, 45-year-old male. What milligram would you recommend without spiking E2? Thanks. At 20 milligrams a day. Yeah, that's not going to spike E2, much at all. It just really doesn't make a difference. You start getting into these weird doses that I've seen, like, other TRT people like suggest, 50 to 100 milligrams a day. I don't know in what world it makes sense to dose that much DHEA. It doesn't to me. So 20 milligrams a day is kind of where I think DHT makes sense. I mean, if you subscribe to the theory that because you've got super physiologic levels of other hormones, that you need to also be extremely super physiologic and the rest of the hormones in order to have a balance, go ahead and try that and see if it works for you. I've not really seen that pan out in reality, but I wouldn't be dosing any more than 20 milligrams in a TRT context. I just would not be doing that, or a natty context where, you've got to bump up test. Yeah. Just don't see that making sense. Dream big, dialed in. I could no longer handle modafinil above 50 milligrams without anxiety and increased panic. Is this because the body's just optimized? Yeah, I mean, yeah. Hold on 1 second. I think I just lost myself here. There we go. Yeah, that is because that's the case. I can tolerate nootropics still, but I don't need them. I'm essentially just, I feel right now, and as I've been on TRT and dialed in various protocols, like I felt when I would take nootropics, even better. So I think, I still take Torque and I can still run nootropics if I absolutely want to, but the effect is much more pronounced and I don't need a lot of the stuff, A B vitamin gives me fucking killer energy for the day. Just a B complex, sleeping 6.5 hours, and I'm still an animal pretty much all day. I might get tired at nighttime hanging out with my girl, and we're like starting to wind down and stuff. 10:30 comes around, and it's like then I start to fade quickly. But it is the case that optimized on tier 2, you're gonna need less nootropics. There's no question about that. Any way to mitigate back knee and hair loss from cream? Hair loss should stabilize. Yes, it does provide some DHT, but it's not bolusing and then dropping. You kind of stay somewhat even with a peak every day, and then it kind of goes back down to that baseline, so it shouldn't really bother you. You really shouldn't lose hair on cream, or at least a lot of it, or it should ultimately bounce out. Regarding acne, I mean, listen, I think everybody needs to go through a cycle of having it on TRT, and then it just eventually goes away. So look at some of these bodybuilders, man. Chase Irons as an example, dosing grams a test, and acne has just like over time, it just went away. Body kind of got used to it. Can't explain that. Downregulation of the sebaceous glands from overstimulation. Who knows what really happens there, but it happened to me, and when it was manageable basically the whole time I was on TRT, but I had, some degree of acne on middle back and then upper back, a little bit of shoulders and stuff. It got pretty bad on cycle. And then when I went down back to TRT from cycle, it all went away and stayed away. And, I'm not dosing a lot of tests now. I'm dosing 5 pumps of 100 milligram per milliliter cream a day, 330 IU-HCG every day, 20 milligrams DHEA. Every now and then I'll just throw a little more test in there for the hell of it, and it kind of keeps things all right, still sexually and all that. But I don't really have the acne like I did at one point. So I think it's just a matter of and all the shit that people say works. Oh, you can rub what's that? I forget the name of the stuff now. I'm so far out of it because I haven't had it in a while. None of the over-the-counter shit works, and you don't want to fucking take Accutane, by the way. Okay, do not take Accutane unless you want to end up with serious sexual dysfunction. If you're one of those unlucky individuals that's susceptible to that, then your life's ruined for a while. Smart move, bucko. Do I prefer test cream over gel? Yes, 100%. Atheist. I recently got really bad cystic facial acne on TRT, 100 milligrams at 182. Blood work showed E2 and DH2 were high. Dutasteride be used to tone down DHT and control facial acne? Hell no. Dutasteride can also cause serious sexual dysfunction. Yeah, I'm not going to be, I'm going to be real binary about that. And I won't be lenient, nor will I say, maybe you can. I've seen enough. Don't touch 5-alpha reductase inhibitors, period. Hope that makes sense. Don't touch them, period. If you were me and you got to see what I saw, countless men coming to me crying over Skypes, telling me their lives are ruined, having gender dysphoria from dosing 5-alpha reductase inhibitors. Makes perfect fucking sense that would happen. If you saw what I saw, you'd go, yeah, there's 0.0% chance that I'm touching 5-alpha reductase. You don't want to play Russian. That's Russian roulette with both your dick and your well-being, your psychology, your health, your bone mineral density. All manner of shit gets fucked up when you inhibit DHT. Don't touch it. You have a problem here. I think you're probably a smart dude. But the obvious thing to me is you're sitting here thinking, can I take something that's potentially going to fuck me up terribly to deal with the overages of metabolites that I'm doing on testosterone? Lower your dose. Lower your dose, dude. Lower your dose. Pin a little more frequently. Get down to the 120s or so. That acne is going to go away, if not 100. And if you need more atavism, take Anavar. Or do some pulse dosing every now and then to kind of get that back up, but still stay in range in estradiol. Zachary just started pushing down on the cream dispenser to get more. Yeah, every time I apply, you have to do that. Underdosing the whole time. Yeah. Generally, whatever you were dosing is whatever you were dosing, right? I mean, but generally speaking, yes, you push down the applicator, and the rest of the cream that is sitting there from those clicks comes about. So that's what you've got to do. I do that every day when I put cream on. Cream on the old boys every morning. 7:30, 7:40 a.m. Good bit of HCG, some DHEA, B complex, vitamin D, lecithin. I'm on my way. Do I think DIM and calcium glucarate actually work? Calcium glucarate, yes. Calcium glucarate does work. It really depends on your protocol, though. And if you're super over an estradiol, it's really not going to move the needle all that much. You would need to dose a lot of it, and that starts fucking other things up. You start clearing your testosterone a little faster too, and you don't really want to do that. Only at the doses where you're kind of close to where you need to be in estradiol to calcium glucarate makes sense. Again, though, it's in and out, and then unless you can visualize what's happening at the estrogen metabolizing level, and you go based on feels and bloods to see, where estrogen goes in response to what dose of CDG, you've got to be very scientific about it. You can't just willy-nilly take the shit. You should run bloods, take the calcium D-glucarate, run bloods again in 4 hours after you've urinated a bit, because you're going to start, clearing some of that estradiol out. You need to know what's happening before you just go, hey, I'll take a gram of this and see what happens to my dick or whatever. No, these are not AIs, neither of them. They're not DHT derivatives, neither of them, meaning they don't have a significant estrogen reduction capacity. Frankly, zinc has a greater estrogen reduction capacity than both of these combined. DIM potentially can inhibit androgen receptor activation, or basically binds to them in an antagonistic fashion, which no one would want. This happens to the prostate, but we don't know if it happens otherwise. Those are subpar inferior drugs or compounds when dealing with estrogen. Nosy Blacklight, do you find PFS cases are the ones to require 0.5 or 1 milliliter of 20% DHT, more so others? Generally, nobody requires that much. It might be useful to dose a bolus of DHT in the beginning just to get it circulating through the system, with the intention not to dial in, because a lot of DHT is going to be counterbalancing estradiol a little too much at the tissue level. As we see, as I've seen in coaching, but if you want to validate that, there's literature on how you can basically reduce gyno substantially by topical DHT on the nipples, on the breast tissue. Right? Well, why does it do that? Fucking antagonizes estrogen at the receptor level, at the gene expression level, and mildly at the aromatase level. So too much is too much. Generally, PFS folks they can't have estrogen over range. It's got to get to a point where it stays in range, and then you determine, do you need DHT, and you dose it carefully and intelligently, and you monitor the person, you monitor bloods, and you decide what to do as things progress, and as you're getting hopefully accurate reporting of symptoms. I'm talking about that from a coaching perspective, but from your perspective, you've got to be pretty scientific about it, man. You could know what compounds to take for PFS and still not fix it, because the dialing in process is really where you're going to get the results, knowing what to do when. Trey Manley, love that name. Would love your thoughts on injectable DHT versus high potency gel. I don't have enough experience with it to warrant suggesting injectable DHT. Yeah, I just don't. I haven't done enough research on it. I don't quite understand to the extent that I do transdermal DHT, the pharmacokinetic profile of it, which again, if you don't really understand something regarding hormones, not a good idea to venture down that path, You really want to know what the fuck you're doing, and you want to know all the details of these things before you touch it. No, I've got a source for injectable DHT. Thanks, though, brother. Thoughts on 5-alpha reductase inhibitors like dutasteride? I don't know if you've been here for the last 10 minutes, but just 10 minutes ago, I've said, and in many pieces of content, including a documentary, which is called Post-Finasteride Syndrome Deniers, a Dangerous Precedent. I'm the guy that exposed one of the major people who has been suggesting people don't need DHT and the hair loss drugs are completely safe. And some of those guys come to me and their lives are ruined. And I've got to now fucking fix them because they watched, you know who on YouTube. Listen, if you were me and you got to see people have bone mineral density problems, complete muting of sexual function to the point where they can't date, can't even get an erection to masturbate to the craziest porn. They've got gender dysphoria. You want that? You want to take the chance of that? I'm always going to be stern when I say to people, with all due respect, regarding 5-alpha reductase inhibitors, first of all, do your fucking research on DHT. And don't believe any YouTuber on one side. You want to run that shit, you better take months to understand what the fuck's going on. Secondly, with all due respect, watch my content on this. Study it further. Study DHT and its interplay with the male body. And lastly, with all due respect, regarding 5-alpha reductase inhibitors, don't be a fucking idiot. Don't fucking take them. I've been over this shit, dude. If there's any chance, even if it's small, which, by the way, the studies on this are grossly underestimating how potently negative this shit can be, why the fuck would you take that chance? Oh, I think I'll be fine. You think you'll be fine? Don't touch it. You'll thank me later. Or don't believe me and touch it. And if you're one of those unlucky motherfuckers where it mutes your sexual function, starts downregulating the function of the endothelium in your penis, where you've got reductions in endothelial nitric oxide synthase, neural nitric oxide synthase, you've got impairment in penile vasculature. You start developing major depressive disorder because your brain is being starved of not only DHT, but potent neurosteroids. Your testicles shrink. Your penis goes white. You start having sexual orientation problems. Fucking told you so. Fucking told you so. Don't think you're smarter than me, bro. I've seen all this shit. You don't want to touch it. Minoxidil can increase prolactin and also cause people to have a PFS-like syndrome. Don't touch it. Rishab, how to fix prolactin tissue effects after years of masturbation, even normal hormones. Well, this assumes you have that. You would only have, some theoretical downregulation of penile base blood flow dynamics, which is really where prolactin affects the penis at the base. If you had a prolactinoma, or if you were dosing kratom consistently for years and you had consistently elevated prolactin, unless you measured your prolactin in your, self-reported bouts of masturbation, you don't even know if it was over consistently. Now, it can rise 10 to 15 nanograms per milliliter upon ejaculation, especially with masturbation, but it goes right back down. I think what is likely to be happening is you're making an error in attribution here. Something else is wrong. I would start with E2 being at 35. If you're not natty, are you on HCG? You can have perfect numbers, but because you're not on HCG, your dick's not going to work, libido's not going to work, sensation's not going to work. Go find Leo and Longevity's saying on Ryan Russo's video about PFS and sexual function, where Leo said, you got to make the sexual, if think about it, the balls are fucking attached to your dick, dude. If you understood the physiology there, epididymis, the 5-alpha reductase enzymes, how they convert to DHT and what that does in the sex organs, you would never not have HCG. So look into that. Otherwise, make sure you know you're right. Right now, prolactin is down. Once it's down, if there are negative effects, they reverse pretty quickly. And the only situation in which you'd be exposed to some potential problem that's persistent after high prolactin is if you had a pituitary tumor. Believe me, I know. Are you totally against 5-alpha reductase inhibitors? Yes. Yes. When you've seen what I've seen, you know. Many men that get hair transplants need to take that per their hair doctor prescription for life. Yeah, the same doctors that have prescribed the medication that in the fucking lawsuit, a class action lawsuit against Merck, which they won for millions of dollars, brought on by the wife of a guy who jumped in front of a fucking train because he lost his dick and was depressed and had suicidal ideation from the use of finasteride. Am I totally against 5-alpha reductase inhibitors? I'm just fucking educated. You should be too. God, you guys haven't read this shit? Go read it. It's like you should never be doing anything you don't know about. Like fully informed about. Oh, how many times do I have to fucking say it? Don't touch it. Actually, if you're even asking and you think, yeah, and you're trying to validate, oh, could I be one of those? I fucking hope you get PFS. Because I warned your stupid ass. I'm serious. I am fucking passionate about that, dude. I see guys in debilitated states because of this drug. Those drugs. Believe me if you want, man. You know, I'm going to continue trying to save people, but it gets exhausting sometimes when people are like, well, maybe I can push it. You go right fucking ahead. I just check regular DHT. Have you ever dealt with candida yeast gut issues? Can this raise inflammation? I think it probably can cause an inflammatory response. Just an excessive cytokine release, which is the inflammatory response. A video on gut repairing. Listen, you need to ask a lot more specific questions. Repairing the gut, what do you mean? Taking a needle and some thread and sewing? You mean intestinal permeability, where the tight junctions are gapped out? You mean small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, where particular types of bacteria, Archaeobacter, swim into the small intestine because they're not getting enough fiber? You mean methane or hydrogen dominant SIBO? What do you mean fix the gut? This is too general, and it means like you've been reading the internet, you know. Inflammation, candida. Get down to a way more granular level. Way more granular level than that, man. There's all manner of different, you know, pathologies that go wrong with intestinal function. Digestive enzymes, hydrochloric acid, gram-positive, gram-negative bacteria, colonic bacteria, intestinal motility. You need to understand the gut in its entirety. It's not just the gut. It's all these different systems which are connected. I can't really suggest anything. Too general of a question. Bro, how amazing is Anavar? Pretty fucking awesome. Pretty fucking awesome. Yeah, I mean, very quickly you notice strength in the gym, increased pumps, increased vascularity, and like you'll put on keepable mass with that stuff. It's one of the most potent anabolic steroids to reduce catabolism at the same time hyper increase anabolism. Anavar is amazing. You know, if it didn't cause me significant side effects at higher doses, I'd be running 25, 50 a day for like 3 months, and I'd just become an animal. The only good argument is hair loss itself causes depression, but it's definitely not a trash hormone. That's not even a good argument. That's not a good argument at all. Be bald, grow a beard, move on your life. If you knew what I know, you wouldn't touch it. No, different process. Both of them need to be dealt with hormones. Quite similar, but not entirely. I mean, the PSSD folks, some of them do over aromatize, like, which leads you to believe that, you know, the selective serotonin reuptake inhibition, the SERT inhibition, effectively is in fact somehow downstream inhibiting DHT. I'd rather be a baldy than take Hims every day. Yeah, right. Yeah, you just have to take loads of Cialis even to get a boner. You have no libido whatsoever. You can't date. I've been over it. Let's all shave our heads to prove a point. Ketoconazole shampoo, a dangerous 5-alpha reductase inhibitor? It's a 5-alpha reductase inhibitor, yeah. I believe it does inhibit 5-AR. Even if it's topical, boys, it doesn't matter. Anything topical goes systemic. You think it's just going to stay local in the area? Local in your scalp tissue? Blood vessels, systemic circulation. Don't touch it, boys. Rackpool got my E2 back on 100 milligram injections twice a week at E2 over 100. So you're doing 100 twice a week or doing 100 a week with 50 milligrams 2x weekly. Try to specify that. It sounds like you're doing 200 a week here and 100 milligram injections at once. E2 is over 100. Thought the trough wasn't that far of a range at all. Check your peaks and labs and look at trough but still having issues. Yeah, you just lower that dose or figure out how to dial in aromatase inhibitors or DHT derivatives. That's your solution there. Or you're gonna have to lower the dose of test. You got to get it down. Where's the prop? Yeah, no sources here, boys. Yeah, I will. I unfortunately I won't want to have to do this, but I'll have to ban you from chat if you ask for sources in the chat. We don't want to piss YouTube off. All right, that's going to jeopardize us. Being sad about thinning hair is far fucking different than wrecking your hormones and brains and causing clinical depression. Yeah. Oh yeah, it's definitely different. Mike, can you help me understand how nifazanone caused PSSD for me, which shut down libido and other issues? What is the mechanism? Oh, there's a variety of mechanisms. I think for sure you got to. I mean, I think you should start from luteinizing hormone, follicle stimulating hormone concentrations, intratesticular testosterone, which can't really be measured, but tests can be measured. DHT, estradiol, look at those. Serotonergic pathways do induce hyperprolactinemia if they're aggressively hit. So I would look at prolactin as well, but unless you want to super chat like $100 or something, this is a very complex process. If you have the budget, just do coaching, and we'll get it resolved. But any of these selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, even SNRIs, some dopamine drugs can cause dysregulation in the brain, dysregulation in the endocrine system, which starves you of particularly DHT, but also heavily converts more of your test to estradiol, causing long-term problems. Yeah, it's very, very complex. 200 total, just sharing experience, already fixing. Okay, I'm glad. Yeah, you got to lower that dose, man. Zachary, I'm curious about trying Anavar with cream. I think that's cool. 100 milligram per milliliter, 4 clicks. That's a low dose, but maybe estrogen will almost definitely be in range there, and you'll have enough DHT. Would be good Anavar dose to complement the cream dose. Start at 6 milligrams a day. Yeah, it sounds ridiculous because it's so low, but you're going to notice like anabolism and pumps and energy from just 6 milligrams, and you minimize all the the potential cardiac biomarker changes, LDL going up, HDL going down, which sometimes takes a while to reverse, ApoB going up. That's more of a predictor of cardiac issues. You don't want that going up. You just don't. So 5 milligrams a day, run it for 8 weeks, 12 weeks, monitor your all those bloods in between. If I were you, you just got to be, monitor everything, dude. Get a blood pressure cuff, get an EKG for at home. Yeah, I mean, you're not going to have heart rhythm or heart electricity problems on Anavar, but measure everything. I've got one. I have it's a little FDA approved device which I can give myself an EKG at any time. If I ran some wacky experiment biohacking and I'm starting to feel like I've got like tachycardia or some otherwise weird shit, I'll just run an EKG. I've had to do that in the past, and it's like, no, everything's normal. Gives you peace of mind, but monitor everything, bro. 5 milligrams, work up to, it depends on you. Some folks can take 25 and run it for 8 weeks. They fucking get gigantic. They have a lot of keepable gains, and they really don't have side effects, man. But other people have some serious side effects. Go watch Vigorous Steve's video. Vigorous Steve, super knowledgeable, scientific-based dude, bodybuilder, former coach for Liver King, one of the people who helped expose him, and good friend of mine. And he's got a video on taking, I think it was like, was it 50 milligrams pharmaceutical grade Anavar, and having, an event at the gym where he felt like he was going to fucking die. Heart was doing some wacky shit. So you got to be real careful with Anavar. It's a tricky drug, dude. It's well studied and well tolerated in those studies for like long periods of time. But it just has the ability to make your heart do some funky shit. It has that ability, not in everyone. Top things you can do to preserve hair in the presence of high-dose testosterone in the absence of 5-HT inhibitions, dermal, GHQ. GHQ, copper itself can be inhibitory of 5-HT reductase. I wouldn't touch it. I would not touch it. Dermal roll. Yeah, dermal roll. Take some tacotrenols. Yeah, take high-dose tacotrenols. That in the literature is one of the things that help men regrow their hair. Yeah, you just have to try to remember. Otherwise, I mean, try to think about if there'd be a way to increase scalp subcutaneous tissue, because ultimately that thins and provides less protection for hair follicles to function. So they reduce, you've got a reduction of that buffer. The buffer keeping them healthy is the subcutaneous tissue in the scalp. If you could figure out how to increase subcutaneous tissue in the scalp without inhibiting 5-AR, well, I think you solve the hair loss problem. Yeah, that's a theory. It is based on some, literature that is a little antithetical to what people are saying, but I believe that literature is probably accurate. I do. It makes perfect sense. Clay, you got the calcium glucarate tip from your video. Totally worked on BP. Yeah, well, sure, it will do that. It's filtering out glucuronidated hormones, especially estrogen. It's got more of an affinity to filter estradiol out. Estrogen can raise blood pressure. Yeah, I mean, the folks that come to me, defectors of the TRT channels that say, let your estrogen go forever, they've always got high blood pressure and dick problems. So this makes sense. Yeah. Yes, they all have problems. Coming from those guys on the internet that say, hey, this predominantly female hormone where our reference range as males is way lower than females. You can have it high. People that say that, I mean, the literature just is very clear that it's not good for erections and whatever. I think everybody should just all get together, like in the and like in a live stream at some of the folks saying you never manage estrogen, and just all at once in the comment section go, "You're a fucking idiot. Stop spewing bullshit. You're causing men harm, causing men to have harm, brethren." All right, any other questions, guys? If you got them, ask them. Send them through. In the meantime, yeah, the tail end of the 50% coaching is here. There's just going to be a point at which the math is beating me and I cannot bring any more clients on board. So those of you thinking about book and booklivecortex.com, I am a serious individual, as you can tell by my demeanor. I get results. I care only about getting results. That is it. That is all I care about, is getting results. Whatever it is that we have to do, whatever your situation is regarding sexual function, I've seen it before. I've seen it many more times than one. I know what to do. We'll get it resolved. The stuff isn't rocket science. Even the hardest situations aren't rocket science. They may be a little more challenging and require a little more of a tailored, nuanced approach. But in the end, it's all the same framework. Yeah. I've got so many years of this, I can sort of visualize all the issues that people might be having. 90% of the people that come to me, the problem is really easy to solve. Really easy to solve. It's the folks that have had longer standing sexual dysfunction for a year or more, where it's still pretty easy to solve, but takes a little longer. Book me, livecortex.com, boys. Code coach discount. You'll save thousands of bucks on every single one of the coaching packages. Yeah. A lot of folks have been eyeing certain ones. Hey, I want to do 3 months. I want to do 6 months, but just kind of waiting for the right time. Maybe we'll give a discount. Now's that time. livecortex.com. livecortex.com. I think I just saw a super chat, but it got retracted. Redacted. ED research ? Yeah, I've done a ton of it. Yeah, erections are mostly driven by dihydrotestosterone, and making sure having estrogen be in balance, but having enough DHT. Yeah, I mean, you can't have some serious arterial problem or Peyronie's, or venous leakage and have erections. But even then, venous leakage responds to testosterone. Yeah, there's studies on that. It was a very long-acting ester. I think it was Nebido. But you could restore venous function in the penis from testosterone. But that assumes, though, you have enough DHT and estrogen isn't, substantially over range. Or generally, it's in your range. That's where it has to be. Your range, gentle brothers. Gentle brothers. Hey, gentle brothers. Are you gentle, brothers? How did everyone sleep last night? I went to bed at purely midnight. 12:06 was the last time I looked at the clock. I don't normally stay up that late these days, but something was happening at my girlfriend's house with her daughter. And woke up at 7:30. Yeah, slept pretty much through the night. So I got probably 7 hours of sleep. So I'm good. 6.5 borderline, but I can make it. Maybe get a little tired at night. 7 though, good all day. Good all day. Good all day. Brothers. If you got questions, post them. If you've got thoughts, send them through the wire. Right? When I see them, their thoughts, I'm going to give you my thoughts in response to your thoughts. Hope your boys are good. Hope those of you in colder climates are preparing for the winter. I'm just ready for it to happen. Yep, ready to break out the cold weather gear, the cold weather thermals, the cyclist level shit. Ready to get a bearskin fleece. You know, they keep being advertised, the bearskin fleeces. Super warm and manly and all this. I'll get one. I think I want to get one. I'm just ready. I'm going to try this year. I don't know if this is possible, but I'm going to try to not wear a jacket all winter. And it gets fucking cold here in Pittsburgh. In the city, tundra, -0 degrees, -5, -10 because of the buildings and blocking the sun and blocking airflow. But, you know, the right cold weather gear, cyclist level stuff, possibly the bearskin hoodie. The right gear, you do not need a jacket. Too heavy. Yes, this is true. But again, this assumes the other hormones are in the right ranges. Jordan Gino with the super chat. Thank you, brother. Been using phenylpiracetam again. Wow. Yeah, now that's back on the market after like a year where it wasn't, which is weird. You know, it wasn't being made or it couldn't be found. Regular phenylpiracetam. So the only stuff that was available was like the bioavailable shit, the really bioavailable shit called phenylpiracetam hydrazide. And now regular phenylpiracetam is apparently back, which is kind of cool for the nootropics folks. How many days a week can I get away with avoid tolerance? 3 days a week. Yeah, 4 max. And then like just take 3 days off if you're going to do that. That's generally how racetams work. Yeah, you know, they do create tolerance. I mean, yeah, with this, you get a little bit of dopamine reuptake inhibition, mostly acetylcholine receptor modulation, potentially some acetylcholine release enhancement. Use choline with it. Don't do it consistently. Yeah, everything that modifies acetylcholine will start to develop a homeostatic response eventually. Yeah, and the response, you know, the effect will not be the same. Shit you thought was predictable dose wise, not going to be the same. So you just gotta give it a break. You got to give it, and you know, and if it consistently, even if you've given it breaks, isn't the same, give it a couple month break. Also, do you think 12 milligrams every day of Proviron long term is okay? I do think so. Yeah, it might induce some hair loss. But I think in terms of health, in terms of liver function, in terms of cardiac function, I think it's safe. I do. I think if I didn't have noticeable hair loss, not to the point where I'd go bald, but to the point it's noticeable enough, I would dose Proviron every day of my life because I can dial it in with TRT any which way, and it feels so good. It's just man feel, dude. You feel like fucking insanely good. Best way to get high estradiol down. Mine is 100. Lower the dose of test. Skip a dose. Skip dosing for a week and go through feeling like dog shit. That estrogen's going to drop. Sometimes you don't need to wait 5 weeks, in a dose reduction to get estrogen down. If you can tolerate it, don't take tests for a week and a half. Oh, that E2 is going to go down. And then you build back up with a new dose, and then you'll get there quicker. How high you think Dave Lee's E2 got on his 250 milligrams a week without managing E2? Well, Dave Lee does not dose HCG. He's one of the I think, rare individuals that does not need to be dosing it. So the fact that he doesn't have, that estrogenic input, he's probably able to get away with this. I think Dave's also running cream, at least as far as I remember. Last Dave only ran cream. If he's changed to injectables, then I'll have to catch up on his content. But without HCG, I mean, dude, I've seen it plenty of times where people can dose 200 milligrams a week of test as long as they're injecting frequently. And their E2's at 35. Now, these are people without HCG, though. DHT cream, no, there's no such thing as DHT cream. There is, but you know, we're usually talking about the 20% gel as an oil base, and every now and then, but I don't need to. I've got pretty high DHT as it is, and I just don't need it right now. I just don't need it for fun. Yeah, sure. I've got endless amounts of it. I've got the 20% concentration, and I've got a concentration I diluted to make a milligram per drop of the dropper vial. It's really awesome because then you can just do fine strokes and run experiments, and then, you know, you're kind of back to normal in like 2 or 3 days. It's pretty awesome. Why does my skin always get red and blue when I take HCG subcutaneously? I can't answer that one. Are you sure you're taking HCG and not methylene blue? That's a weird one, brother. What are my thoughts on low SCPG levels during recovery from PSSD? Is it true that low SCPG is not ideal for recovery? It might not be super ideal, but I'm on the side of things where I go off of what I have witnessed, and I've not witnessed low SHBG be a problem for anyone. I don't see that being a problem for anyone. Doesn't mean that there aren't people for whom it's a problem, but I've not seen it. Regarding this stuff, I don't look at that when I'm dealing with PSSD or PFS. No, I don't really look at it. I mean, unless it's sitting in single digits for a while and it doesn't move, I'm not looking at it. If it's at 8, I'm really not concerned about it. Zachary, do you find a difference between different brands or bases of cream? No, I don't. I like Dave Lee a lot, but I don't like his stance on estrogen, although he's a lot better about it than some. I think, it's a couple things there. I think number one, again, Dave's like one of Dave's like mentors is one of the guys that's really, really pro, you know, letting estrogen go. His name is Neil Rouget. So, I mean, if you've got a guy that like, you know, says don't manage estrogen, let it go up, it's nothing but beneficial as your mentor and a guy that you sort of look up to, then yeah, a good degree of that guy's ideology is going to be infused into you. Can't, you know, I mean, it's just kind of the way it is. I like Dave. He's a cool dude, smart dude. We agree on estrogen more than I think folks think, but I don't think Dave makes a point not to be extreme about it, you know, as extreme as some of his counterparts on that channel where he first became popular, and some of the other folks who are very, very extreme about it. You know, I mean, Dave and I agree a lot on DHT, and look, DHT counterbalances estradiol a lot. So, you know, in some of those instances, if you have enough DHT, it may be able to provide a buffer to counterbalance a little bit of elevated estradiol, and it's like really not a problem when it's sitting at 40. Although I don't see that too often. David, I just found out DHT on TRT is 47. Yeah, see, that's lukewarm, you know. I don't know where erection quality is, but that's not great. I blame my ED on DHT. E2 is 25. Well, yeah, that's probably a part of it, unless you don't have HCG in the picture, which can also cause ED if you don't have it. Yes. Yep. I know plenty of dudes, man, on TRT that the numbers look fine. They've got ED and libido issues. They bring HCG in and manipulate the protocol where the numbers still look fine. Libido and erections come back. So all matter of different things. Increasing DHT, Masteron does not increase DHT. It is not DHT. The way to increase DHT would be to change what you're doing regarding injection or test modality to test cream. So you have a much higher ratio, DHT versus estradiol. Find the right dose. You get a lot of DHT and not a lot of estradiol, not as much. Or get 20% DHT gel from source list, dilute it however you want, or use it as is. 1 drop is 7 milligrams of DHT. That's where we're at with that, brother. Or I should say, brothers. Brother. All right, boys. I'm going to end the stream. Great questions. Kick ass. This week, lots more content. We're just going at it, man. I've got so much to talk about. You know, I've booked a substantial amount of more clients over the summer. It was a very busy summer, so there's a lot more interesting shit that I've witnessed and stuff that I want to talk about. But, you know, also, I mean, you guys are loyally waiting for content and just kind of hanging out. So I'm going to be pumping it out, man. So this week, look forward to it. Next week, look forward to it. The week after, look forward to it. Be there. Like the video if you're still here. It makes a big difference. Honestly, it does. You want to do one thing for me? You know, if you're not going to grab product or anything to support us, just like the video. It does help. It's free to do. It takes a second. I'd appreciate it if you did it. Otherwise, I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your weekend. I'm going to just kind of have some downtime and try to enjoy my time with my love of my life, my lovely lady, and try to rest it out. Maybe watch a flick or something, man. We'll see. All right, boys. Kick ass. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye. 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 Later.